This is Wayne on the announcer stand, and with Aviation Insight interview segments throughout the morning. And kicking off this morning, I've got a special guest up here, Joel Edwards. Joel is an astronaut, and Joel, welcome to Sun and Fun 2016.
Thanks, Wayne. It's a pleasure to be here. We had a lot of fun performing yesterday afternoon with everyone, and we're looking forward to a big show today.
Right, now for those folks who heard me say astronaut and then you said you were performing, you weren't in the space shuttle or anything like that. You were flying a T-28 yesterday, right?
Yeah, I was. I would have loved to have flown the orbiter yesterday, as a matter of fact. But we wouldn't have been able to spend 10 minutes flying around the field, as you know. Yep, we were flying North American Aviation T-28 that we used for air shows around the country. And our next event will be at Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point in North Carolina in a couple of weeks.
Okay, now you and I were talking a little bit earlier about, I'm old enough that, I remember back when Sputnik went up, so I followed the space program, the development, and the astronauts and so forth. Everybody knew the names of the astronauts now, and their background and so forth. Tell me a little bit about your background so we can educate people who may not be familiar with you.
Well, like yourself, I too remember those grainy black and white images of John Glenn and Alan Shepard being strapped into the Mercury spacecraft. Being an astronaut is kind of an interesting profession. There'll never be a Mickey Mantle again. There'll never be a Ty Cobb. But as an astronaut, you end up becoming a peer of your childhood heroes. Neil Armstrong never flew a winged vehicle into space and landed on a runway. Joe Edwards never walked on the moon. So each of us had things that we would have liked to have done, and every astronaut would have liked to have done all of them himself or herself. For me, I was educated. My father was in the Air Force. I was educated at the Naval Academy, majored in aerospace engineering. And I went to Navy flight training in Pensacola, flew jets. I flew the F-14 Tomcat for many years out of Virginia Beach and NES Pax River, Maryland. I was a test pilot. As a matter of fact, I've actually flown the F-14 that's on static display here, that particular F-14D, and I was the lead test pilot for the F-14 Bravo and the F-14 Delta. So I flew the initial flight test of that airplane that's here on static display at Lakeland. About 15 years into my Navy career, and by the way, almost all the majority of astronauts are actually active duty military and continue to be so while they're down there, down in Houston flying. But I showed up there in 1995, flew in the Shuttle Mir program, flew Endeavour, spent time in all of the orbiters, the Mir space station, and a stint over in Russia as we were designing, training, and developing the International Space Station, which is in orbit today.
You were part of that design concept for the International Space Station.
Yeah, I've only been in a few of the modules of ISS, but all of that was on the ground. I never had the opportunity to fly to ISS. So we trained a lot of the crews, we reviewed a lot of the design. I was pretty heavily involved in safety for the vehicle, as a matter of fact. And, I spent a year over in Star City, Russia, cross-country skiing at 3 a.m. through the burst forests and what have you, to get ready for work.
Right, those little things that just aren't available to you every part of the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so your actual experience then as an astronaut, take me through that. What was your first ride?
Yeah, so STS-89, I flew with the Mir 24 and 25 crew. The fact is, we flew a little over 100 space shuttle missions, and frankly, it's a shame that the vehicles are in museums because they all had a lot of life left in them. Every crew probably has something they can point to that was a first, because the Space Shuttle Orbiter really was an experimental vehicle. Every flight was really a test flight, but some of the things that kind of hang on the wall for us is we flew the greatest mass that ever been flown in Earth orbit. We flew with more humans in space simultaneously that's ever been flown in space, even today. And we flew the closest flying maneuvers around a space station that's ever been attempted in the history of manned spaceflight.
That's an interesting viewpoint, talking about, other people have done firsts that can never obviously be done again, but you have your own selection of firsts that you can claim.
Yeah, the vehicle, the Space Shuttle first flew in '81, we retired it in the 21st century. We were continually improving those spacecraft. So every time they flew, they were slightly different, or perhaps significantly different when they flew before. We flew some brand new main engines. One flight before mine, we changed the attitude of the vehicle during its trajectory into orbit, things like that. We had new computers and new software loads. It was each of those vehicles was unique, and I can tell you this, having been in all of them, each of them were pristine. Even Columbia, when it flew its last flight, was like a new vehicle when you went into it. And you look at out on the flight line here, the Mustangs, the T-28s, the B-17, the Stearmans and what have you. The North American Aviation Space Shuttle Orbiter was a real example of American craftsmanship. It was a beautiful machine, painstakingly built and maintained extremely well by a lot of highly trained people over at the Cape.
Now, as you mentioned, practically every flight was like a first flight, even if the vehicle had been up before because of the modifications and so forth. What's your mental perspective of being on that vehicle then when it's going up? You're going up with something that's new, it's a first. How do you prepare yourself to get that level of confidence up that everything's going to work right?
Well, we had a lot of confidence in the people that we worked with. And unlike manning my T-28, I have one mechanic here with me today, Brandon Dyer from Culpeper, Virginia. I pretty much know everything about that airplane, any gripes that it's had over the last couple of weeks or what have you. In the orbiter, there are thousands of people maintaining that thing. So I flew STS-89. We landed. The docs checked us out. I met my immediate family. One of my cousins from South Alabama came down to the Cape to meet us after the landing. Which, by the way, a space shuttle landing was more spectacular than a launch. But we can get into that later. So anyway, we went out to dinner, and all of us get a little skinny while we're up there. So I was downing some sushi and rice pretty heavily to get a good meal. It was a pretty long day, we're into about a 24-hour day by then. And my cousin Jane is sitting across from me, and she wanted to say something and kept getting interrupted. But I finally did a lull in the conversation, and she looks at me and she says, "Joe, did you feel any closer to God while you were up there?" And I know what she wanted me to say. She wanted me to say yes, but typical astronaut engineer, I had to tell her the truth. I said, "Jane, 3 hours before launch, we went out and manned up a 4.5 million pound bomb. And that vehicle was going to burn liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen at minus 300 degrees Fahrenheit at the rate of one swimming pool's worth every second for 8 minutes and 32 seconds to get us into orbit." So based upon all of that, I thought it would be in my best interest to be intimately familiar with the Almighty before those engines lit, rather than waiting until after they shut off.
Yeah, please let this go well as opposed to thank you.
Well, and that, there is an astronaut prayer, and it is said before you go man up. And it's the same prayer that, if you ever watch The Right Stuff, Alan Shepard, the first American to fly in space, said. And the prayer is, "Lord, please don't let me screw up."
We've all heard that one.
Yeah, and he may have used a slightly different verb,
and
in real life and in the movie.
And in your own mind, you can modify the words a little bit, but I know what you're saying.
That is the thing about manned space flight is the safety margins are very, very small. Performance margins are extremely small, and in the orbiter, as a pilot, you could if things started to fail, you could literally reach down, hit a button, and blow the entire stack up if you made a mistake. So there are plenty of opportunities to very easily make a mistake that would destroy your mission, or perhaps even kill you and your crew. And that, if you think about, we've lost 3 astronaut crews over the course of manned spaceflight. We have never lost a vehicle or a crew or a human being because of a mistake by the astronauts in flight. And it's very different than, now, we've only flown into space, 100 and some odd times. But as you know, in aviation, generally if there's a mishap, 80% of the time or more, there was a mistake made by the crew. So that record is something that we are very proud of. And of course, we had a personal stake into ensuring that we maintain that record.
Great. Now, okay, so now that you're not in the active astronaut business anymore, what occupies you now? And you mentioned you were in the air show. How did you get into that business?
Well, getting in the air show business about 10 years ago, I was declared clinically insane, and I bought a warbird. So we've been doing that since then, and it actually is a lot of fun. I really enjoy having the opportunity to interact with the crowd, being able to meet the kids, having the opportunity to introduce what we have here in naval aviation, by the way, to people that might not otherwise have the opportunity to be introduced to it. My day job is I'm the CEO of a company that I own that does engineering, program management, information technology for some commercial outfits in some areas like sensor development for unmanned aerial vehicles, but also for governmental organizations like the Navy, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the Air Force, and what have you.
Good. And as you were talking there, I wanted to take a step back. You mentioned earlier that the landing of the shuttle was more spectacular than the takeoff. Explain that.
Well, we would send invitations out for both the launch and the landing. Everyone wanted to attend the launch. I think I had 850 of my best friends. I'm literally best friends. They're all. In fact, we used to say.
You don't know how many good friends you've had.
Yeah, I did. I seem to make a lot of friends the days I was running around in a blue flight suit. We used to say, and we didn't really mean it to be dark humor, but who's going to come to your space shuttle launch? It's going to be all the people that will come to your funeral. Not that it's going to be the same thing. Those are it's the same people, right? That network. So thousands of people there. The launch is spectacular. It's loud. It's wonderful, and all that. The landing was very different. Very few people would come. We'd set up a couple of sets of aluminum bleachers right in front of the runway. No kidding. No 1,000-foot line. No five, right on the edge of the runway. That's where your immediate family would sit. Generally, the only people that come watch a landing. Smoke, fire, and noise on launch. Landing totally silent. Vehicle would mark on top of the runway, supersonic. You'd hear two booms as the shocks passed over the field. After that, totally silent. Complete silence. The thing would come around, do a teardrop entry. You'd see the gear come down, and without a noise or not even the birds would be seen, the thing would just land silently and it'd roll right out on the runway. Stop right in front of it. I don't know how we got away with doing it, for so many years.
Right.
There we are. You look out the window. There's your family, in the bleachers next to you.
And as you explain it, I can see that the beauty of it, because if you're at an air show and you're watching a glider aerobatic performance, for example, it's one of the most beautiful things I see at an air show.
Yeah.
And then to see the shuttle out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a wonderful vehicle and a great program, great people, a great example of what this country can produce when it puts its mind to it.
We have some great opportunities and some abilities, and we just need to decide what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Now, here at Sun and Fun, are you around the grounds at all? If people heard us talking this morning and want to come over and meet you, are you available someplace?
Yeah, I'm probably the only person here in a blue NASA flight suit. So yeah, we'll be around for several hours. We might go flying if the weather clear up just a bit. And love to meet the folks here. We are flying again on Sunday. Spending some time with some teachers on Saturday. I think have a few events between now and then. But yeah, please, if we're around, love to spend time with you and love to have the opportunity to meet as many folks as we can while we're here.
Okay, well, this has been very interesting. I hope for the folks listening, certainly for myself as well. And I want to thank you, Joe, for coming on out here and visiting with us this morning.
My pleasure, Wayne. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.